Hello. Is it a touch sacrilege to do a coffee with Kate when I in fact have tea? Perhaps. So good though. I am, however, repping my coffee in a different way. This is Indigenous Beadwork from Beadwork by Jordy. Thank you, Jordan. Today I want to chat a little bit about, if not writing insecurities exactly, maybe like writing concerns. Some that have been in the past, some that I'm currently facing, some that I expect future me to have to face. I don't want to just talk about mine though, so I did ask my patrons about their current writing concerns, and there were so many responses. I love to see this because it's kind of like, the writing community is great for so many things, right? Like, we encourage each other, we read each other's work, but also we can chat about things that are hard, that not everyone faces necessarily if you're not someone who creates things. And I am in the thick of revisions right now. And I find that is often where I'm just like, that is the embodiment of how I feel, just a little mad gremlin. I was telling Becca about this, I talked about this recently in a video, but it's one of those things where Project Death just keeps expanding, which is a good thing. It's what it needs to do, but it's one of those where I feel like I'm caught in a current, right? So I'm swimming and I'm swimming and I'm swimming and I'm trying to get to the shoreline, I'm trying to get to the finish line. I see the end, but it's like no matter how hard I swim, I feel like I'm not moving. I'm not making any progress. I keep getting like pulled back by the strength of the ocean or Project Death. So I keep adding words, but I'm not actually getting it's taking a lot longer to get farther along, and I know I'm making it significantly better. Like, every time I finish a scene, I come away being like, holy shit, what an improvement. But I just keep staring at so much more to go, and it's hard. It's a weird place to be to complain about, because again, I have like I have tangible proof on my computer screen of it getting better. So I should be fully encouraged by this, but instead I have like, it's not a sense of hopelessness, it's just a sense of like drowning, if we continue with my water-based metaphors. And I think my biggest concern is how to pull myself out of this headspace, because I'm gonna be in it for a lot longer. I still have so many more tens of thousands of words to go. And it's just like this chugging along that I know has to happen, but really doesn't feel awesome. Having done it is awesome. Doing it is rewarding in itself, but something about like just, it's literally just part of the way through a race. And you just know you have to do like double what you just did, and what you just did feels really hard. So it's like every incremental thing isn't bad. It feels good. You're like, haha, but it's just so far away. It's that looming camera feel where it like does that weird zoom thing and you're like, oh shit, it keeps getting farther now. And these are the kind of moments that I both love AuthorTube for, but I also, when I envision my little corner of AuthorTube, it's usually like to try and pep other people up, which is why I have a whole segment. Should I name it something else for today? Not Coffee with Kate? Tea with... I have a whole segment that I do so that it's like, oh, morning flash, this is going to be slightly different than your usually scheduled content. And maybe that's just for me. Maybe y'all don't care. But I think it can be hard because there's not like, where I'm at right now, doesn't feel like a solution can be found. It is quite literally just continue chugging along, and eventually the finish line won't be so far away. But yeah. Anyways, I wanted to share other people's concerns in the same way that I think it's helpful to talk about past concerns, because sometimes you overcome the thing and you forget just how hard that thing was in the moment. And in reminding yourself that you can overcome it, it's like, I've done it before, I can do it again. It might not be the same exact thing, but I was recently at the San Antonio Book Festival. Very cool, wonderful, great, super well put together. I had so much fun. Went with my friend. Oh, and my co-writer. And it was wonderful hearing the authors speak not only about their books, but also about their process, because I think it's kind of this interesting thing where even if you're not a writer, readers are also curious about how their favorite stories are made, right? But then also lots of people who read a lot want to dabble in writing themselves. So there's just a lot of questions about the writing process at these kind of events. And it's funny hearing the advice sometimes, especially around publishing, because the people who often give it are like so many years removed. That was like the one complaint I remember when I was watching the Brandon Sanderson lecture series, was that he was so far removed from having to query or get a relationship with the publisher for the first time that like the actual advice is not, like it's not bad advice, it's just like not current advice. It's not the thing that is advised right now. So if we were listening to someone who's like, oh, just send the first 5 pages to an agent and like get rejections and like that's how you'll get feedback. But of course nowadays the agents are like, don't send me anything until you're fully done with the manuscript, and don't send me anything specifically unless I ask. It's just hard. Anyways, in that vein, right? You just forget things or you're not current on things, and so I wanted to get others' perspectives. But first, Juniper shared this entire quote. It was incredible because Juniper, along with Concerns, is having the same kind of ones that I am right now. Juniper said, what you said about the better you get, the farther it feels you have to go really resonates with me. I've been feeling like the more work I do on my writing, the clearer my potential becomes. But getting a more accurate vision of what my potential looks like also shows me how far I am from reaching it. It loosely reminds me of that famous Eric Glass quote, which doesn't necessarily fix the problem, but does validate the feeling, which is what I hope this video is as a whole. And actually, this is one of my most responded to posts on Patreon, because I think that's all we want in a lot of ways, is just to like feel seen, feel heard, and be like, okay, I'm not alone in having this issue. We're creating things alone most of the time, so feeling like we're not alone in these aspects is nice. The quote, nobody tells this to people who are beginners. I wish someone told me. All of us who do creative work, we get into it because we have good taste, but there is this gap. For the first couple years you make stuff, it's just not that good. It's trying to be good, it has potential, but it's not. But your taste, the thing that got you into the game, is still killer. And your taste is why your work disappoints you. A lot of people never get past this phase, they quit. Most people I know who do interesting creative work went through years of this. We know our work doesn't have the special thing that we want it to have. We all go through this. And if you're just starting out, you're still in this phase. You gotta know it's normal, and the most important thing you can do is a lot of work. Put yourself on a deadline so that every week you will finish one story. It is only by going through a volume of work that you will close the gap, and your work will be as good as your ambitions. And I took longer to figure out how to do this than anyone I've ever met. It's gonna take a while. It's normal to take a while. You've just gotta fight your way through. Love. Love that, love that, love that. And I loved how Juniper put it too. The more work you do, the better you get, the clearer that potential is, the more achievable it feels, and yet it shows how far away you are. And maybe that's also exactly what I'm experiencing with Project Death, is I'm currently making this so much better, but it's just the like looming thought of how many more scenes I need to do that on that is just wild. Writing is hard. Writing is fun, writing is rewarding, writing is all of these great things. But yes, I'm in the thick of it. So please comment down below, let me know if you've experienced this feeling. Let me know, perhaps, if there is a hack, love a hack, that gets you out of this besides just doing the work. I have a feeling there is not, and that is okay. But any quotes you want to share, if you have a hack, I would love to hear it. I will try it, even if the chance of it working is so small. So, if you don't mind, let me share some other concerns. Maggie says, my greatest concern at the moment is that my middle grade book appears to have failed on sub. I thought that making it through the query trenches and landing an amazing agent meant that my journey from writer to published author was secured. Not with this book, it seems. I did receive a lot of positive and complimentary feedback from some of the editors who chose to pass on my middle grade, and my wonderful agent has assured me that she still believes in my writing. She currently has a YA book I finished editing recently in her pilot client manuscripts, hoping that this book will be the one. And until then, I'm coping by focusing on my newest WIP, an adult Southern Gothic novel steeped in death and Appalachian superstition, which sounds incredible. Heck yes, Maggie. It's been really fun because Maggie's hung out in a lot of the live streams, and so like I feel like I'm kind of on this journey with her in some ways. I'm just like rooting from the sidelines. And it is so interesting that there are so many points of failure is not the word I want to use. I want to come up with a better word, but I'm sure that like that's what that feels like. The rejection. Yes, I've queried before. I know what getting each of those no's slowly coming in means. And I want to say that Kevin has an incredible video on this, so I'll link that down below. It is truly wild the amount of rejection you face along the way as a writer, especially if you're going the traditional route, because you also have rejection with like, I gave it to beta readers or CPs and like a couple people had to drop out. That can feel like rejection because you're not getting the feedback that you'd hoped for. You get rejected along the way with all of the agents you queried potentially, most likely. And then you get on rejection when you're out on sub, which I imagine is a very isolating sort of feeling that not a lot of people have, or not a lot of people can really talk about and share in some ways, because like Maggie has already achieved what so many writers dream of, which is to be agented. That is an incredible feat in itself, but then to like not get that next step, this middle ground, and it feels, I'm sure, weird to complain to some people who aren't agented about this, who like covet the thing that you have, but also you're not struggling with the same thing about like getting the edits ready for publication. So it's, yeah. I'm keeping my fingers crossed for the YA novel. Man, that's tough. And yet, at the same time, is the solution also just to continue writing? That's about to be the solution to all of this. Oh, that's the worst. Mary shared, I've hardly written at all in the last year and I want to get back into it. My creativity, or at least the desire to be creative, was just sapped starting at the end of last February. I have stories, both original and fanfic, that I want to tell. For this court, I want to just try writing 5 minutes a day on my chosen writing days, Monday through Friday. I managed 5 minutes maybe 3 times this month. I do want to try rebuilding my journaling habit too, in the hopes that maybe this might help me want to write again. Even if it doesn't, journaling is good for my mental health anyways. Absolutely, Mary. Me too. I will say that's the one thing I got out of the book that I'm currently forgetting the name of, which is the lesson that sometimes when you don't want to do something, if you just start physically writing, sometimes the creativity will come out of that. Not always, but sometimes. And something about keeping this sort of agreement with yourself. I think it's just hard to get out of a funk sometimes, period, but also like a writing funk, especially when that writing funk is connected to like a general sort of mental health funk. It's tough. I think a lot of people have experienced that at least once. I think a lot of people will experience that if they have like seasonal affective disorder, and every time is one of those where you forget, I think you forget the feeling of how bad it was at the time and how much you wanted this thing and yet could not convince yourself to do the thing. These are the times that I wish I like cataloged my journaling better, because I'm sure I talked about this somewhere and was like, this is what I did, and like it's kind of helping, and then like all of a sudden, so it seems, you're out of the funk. But yeah. Mary, I think you have a solid plan going. And I keep mentioning it because it is just blowing my mind, but in The Perfectionist Guide to Letting Go, she talks about the kind of like 4 steps you need to like make a change. And actually you would be on like the 2nd step, which is realizing that you don't want to be where you're at anymore and just thinking about the change. Actually, you'd be on like the 3rd step, because you're actively making progress towards changing, towards pulling yourself out of the funk, towards getting back to that like place of creativity that you want. And I think that is worth celebrating too. If you have ever found yourself in a funk, let me know what helped you. Were there anything specific like a writing challenge, or was it something like going on a walk each day and then, or journaling each day? Yeah. Similarly, Mike shares a story. I've not written for the last 8 months. While I don't call thinking of my story only as writing. We lost a pup last September and got a puppy in November. I've been either focused on the pup or work, and getting back into writing has not been easy. I just want to get back to writing. Yeah, I think, dude, life events truly fuck everything up. Sometimes in a great way, and then sometimes with something like death that can be really, really hard. I think humans can be creatures of routine as much as I often don't have one. And I think sometimes when these sort of things affect not only our routine, but also our mental health and just coping mechanisms, it can be really tough. So I think the same kind of thing of sitting down for 5 minutes, and whether that is journaling or just trying to write creatively for 5 minutes, just like start so small once a day might be it, especially when on a time crunch, like with a little puppy. Lee shared an interesting conundrum. I've put in effort to finally start writing every day again, but now that I'm actually doing it, writing is losing its shine. I'm starting to resent writing. I'm not really sure how to fix this besides breaking the habit, which I don't want to do. Okay, And Regina actually recommended kind of similar to what I would say, which is have you tried alternating projects? And Lee points out I'm trying to push through to finish the project I'm working on, but I could probably use a few days on a different one. Okay, I have had this too, and in fact, I have it almost every time I'm nearing the end of a project, and nearing the end can be slightly different. Usually it's like over the 50% mark, but also sometimes I'll experience it around the like 40% I have to push past, 60 past, 80 past. And I don't always advise leaving something for your future self, because then your future self will be annoyed at your past self for having done it. However, sometimes what we need is just to like bullet point things very quickly in the scene and just move on to the next scene that sounds exciting. I know that technically you need to get it done, but sometimes you're not at this place. You need to like speed run through the project sometimes in certain spots, not all of the spots, but certain spots. And then if that means like having to go through all of it and then come back around and go through what you missed and take that feels more like forward momentum rather than resenting your project. So that is the one bit of advice, because I do encounter this every project. And Lee, if you use it, let me know if it helps you. Also, Eliza's concern is one I'm like kind of having too. Eliza shares, right now my biggest concern is staying in the moment and convincing myself that I have time. I have 3 projects that are almost ready for a professional edit, and I'm in like one last read through. I'm working on draft 1 of book 2 in the soap series. I'm editing the rough draft, and I'm near the end of the rough draft of an age gap romance. On top of those, I have 2 other series that I have ideas for, and another couple screenplays with scenes popping into my head sometimes. Of course, I start to plan for months and quarters, and I'm due in August, so I'm trying to not plan much for August and September, but still want to make progress for my 2023 run goals. Congratulations! Feels like a very smart decision not to plan anything for during and after that time. That is awesome that you are juggling so many things. I think also when we're juggling so many things, it can feel overwhelming. And I think sometimes because our brain is so full of the overwhelm that like trying to then sit down and focus on one thing becomes pretty hard. So it's like technically you do have the time, but do you have the mental capacity is like an entirely different question sometimes. I wish I had a solution for this, but I don't, Eliza, because I too have the same problem with juggling a lot of things. It is the best kind of problem. I love it. I know I fully put it on myself, but sometimes you're in that space where again, it's just, you got a lot going on. If anyone has any advice for this, I would also love to know it. Lewis shared, minus all the effort I've put into writing over the last 16 years and having no one really read my stuff. I put it out there, asked people to read it, and gifted it out to my friends, but only 2 or 3 have actually read it. Not even my missus has read my stuff except 1 or 2 of them, despite me even using our tabletop RPG characters in them. It makes me sad and concerned that I'll never get it. Never be seen, never mind successful. So yes, I think this is something that's really difficult for a lot of writers, is just finding people to exchange your work with. There's a bunch of Discords, but I would also always recommend offering, like exchanging. That's why critique partners are great. Usually you'd like to have like a relationship, but you are not the only person. I think, as I mentioned earlier, the hard part is that it can feel like rejection when those sort of things fall through. But it's just go on the NaNoWriMo forums, find the Discords of different writers or writing groups, and offer up to read other people's work. You can find someone who writes in the same genre as you're writing and y'all can exchange, or offer your services to someone who likes genres you like, even if y'all aren't writing the same exact thing. But I always recommend offering up your own time first or asking for an exchange, because we all need our work read, right? And I think that is more likely to get you more attention and more people to say yes to you. But it is such a struggle to be in this place where you feel like you haven't had anyone read your work. I think also a place that I have like slowly gotten over and have to get over with every single genre kind of thing is feeling okay to share work, even in itself can be really challenging. And then I think once you finally make the hurdle, like that first person you send your work to, and then if they don't read it, it can be so disheartening. But again, it's just keep writing. What is it? Write, release, repeat. And that release for you can be literally releasing it if you're self-publishing it, or it could be releasing it to your CPs, or it could just be releasing it to a fan fiction website. Write, release, repeat, and read a lot. Yes. I'm gonna share 2 more, and then for everyone who on the Patreon that I don't get to, I will comment back. Valkyrie shares, my concern is sometimes I feel like I miss my window of opportunity. I spent the last 15 years working on my career and not writing, and now in the last 2.5 years, I've written 3.5 novels, midway through the 4th. And I worry it's too late to do anything with them. And I know this is BS intellectually, but emotionally, I can't help but wonder what I could have been doing, why I wasn't doing it for the last decade, and if now I'm too far behind to ever get on track, even though I'm the one who decides what that track looks like. Valkyrie. Yes. Valkyrie adds, and to combat it, I just don't stop writing. I've expanded my circle to include in-person writer friends, and one is in her 60s just pursuing her first novel. So I know that as many people as I'm behind, I'm also ahead, and it's truly not a competition. There's room for us all to be successful. Valkyrie, I appreciate you so much because the amount of times where I've like intellectually known that my concerns are bullshit, but emotionally they really don't feel like bullshit and they really feel like a problem is 90% of the time. So I so appreciate you sharing this. Yes, I think writing is one of the, like, genuinely one of the few things where it doesn't matter how old you are. Anyone of any age can pursue writing, but I do understand feeling like you're behind. I think the times I've experienced that is when I'm like, oh, I have a really good idea and I wasn't like skilled enough to write that yet, and then inevitably like a couple years down the line there's like a surplus of those kind of books and I'm like, oh shoot, did I miss my shot at getting this one when this boom sort of happened? But so it goes, you know. And the fun part is it'll always come back around. You have your own unique perspective. Like there's so many things to reassure yourself with, but such a great point that like intellectually you can know that this is a non-issue, but emotionally it really does still feel like one. And finally, Anja shares, I was concerned about the recent surge in AI written stuff and enough readers that didn't mind where their stories actually came from, but that does not change the fact that I have to write. I cannot imagine not writing. Will it make it more difficult for new writers to be seen? Yeah, probably. But the stories still want out, so I write. And my joy of writing actually returned when being less stressed about publishing. There will be new options, different forms of publishing, something will come up. I love that you kind of on that same sort of like emotional versus intellectual thing. Sometimes we're just like in one more state than the other, but yeah, you're totally right. I think that there's valid concerns, but also for a lot of people, if you're a writer, you're going to be writing regardless because you want to get the stories out. You have these ideas in your head and you just need to get them down. And there's like such a self-satisfaction first and then the publishing and everything later. And I agree fully that there's a different kind of stress around publishing versus writing. And it's best, and this is advice to myself to almost sort of separate those. I can much better keep my full joy for the writing and the projects if I'm not worried about, will this sell? What do I need to do to make it sell? Will even other people like it? I'm just trying to write the best story that I can for me, then that's enough in a lot of ways. And that's what I have to remind myself of. Business concerns, that's what I would say. A business concern is a totally different cap that need not concern the writer part of myself too much. It is much better when there's like a thick wall for which they have to chat with each other. What am I saying? Anyways, please do comment down below. Let me know what your concerns are, any sort of past, present, future concerns you might have. I feel like sometimes I'm saying future concerns. Sometimes we're at this one stage and we're about to face something that we've never done before and it can kind of interrupt what we're currently doing. That's the kind of future concerns that I've had, although I think Anja's point about AI and the future forms of publishing as well is like a totally valid concern. Man. Anyways, this was not to be a downer. This was just meant to share that like, I think we've all had a lot of these. If you haven't had every exact one, I think you can still relate to them. And if you have any advice for any of the people whose concerns I shared or my own concerns, I would love to hear them. Thank you guys so much for watching and I will see you all very soon with a new video. Oh, I did not come anywhere close to finishing my tea this time. I was in the zone. Bye.